It needs to become a system and a process within your organization. I mean, if you want to grow as a company and you want to scale as a company, the way you invoice your accounting needs to be a process. It needs to be a systematical process every single month. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Construction MF'ers podcast. I'm Scott Peper, founder and CEO of Mobilization Funding. I got a great topic here for you today. I'm excited for my guest to talk about it. We're going to kick around how construction subcontractors can benefit themselves with their general contractors, project manager, or superintendent. How do you shine up in the light? How do you be the most favorable? How are you seen in a positive light versus a negative light? How do you have that GC's project manager, superintendent working for you, not working against you? We're going to talk a little bit about change orders, making sure you get paid on those jobs. And then, of course, when the inevitable construction problem occurs, how do you win and how do you still win and utilize that project manager, superintendent for you and not hurt against you? And I got the perfect guest to talk about all that. My guest today has spent a little more than a decade on some of the most complex projects in New York City, billions and billions of dollars. He was and worked through the ranks of many general contracting firms as a superintendent, general contractor. And today he has his own company, which can help you accomplish a lot of these same things. Jerry Aliberti with Pro-Accel. Welcome to our show.
Scott, thanks for having me. I'm really excited. Thank you.
You're welcome. So before we get to this, and these topics are awesome, why don't you tell me a little bit about why you are perfectly equipped for this? Talk about your background a little bit and tell us about Pro-Accel and what you're doing now. And then we'll dive right into these questions.
Sure, absolutely. So before you said I have a little over 1 decade, I have a little over 2 decades of experience in the New York City construction market, predominantly in the infrastructure civil space. We also did a lot of commercial work as well, a lot of utility work, foundation work, SOE work. So I moved up the ranks pretty quickly. I would say I first started off with $100 million a year company, then went to a $400 million a year company, then to $1 billion a year company. For my first company, I was out in the field as a field engineer, worked up to an assistant super. Then I started running my own jobs as a super. I was also estimating in between. And then that's it. And then from there, I went back and forth to either running my own jobs or estimating my own jobs. My former employee was a $1 billion a year company, and we were estimating jobs up to over $1 billion. So I'm really fluent in both operations, both in field and in the office. In addition, I had my own concrete business several years ago for several years. So I really understand the sales and marketing aspect of it and all the different complicated parts that have to come together in order to have a successful business. And now I help small and mid-sized contractors create repeatable project success and profitability by improving their field and office operations, reducing their overhead, and helping them build high-performing teams, which is a necessity in today's market where we lack so much management.
Well, that's awesome. So let's get right into it. And let's talk about one of the conversations we always have with construction subcontractors primarily is they're always managing that relationship with their general contractor. And in particular, the project manager or the superintendent that's managing that project. They're trying to win the work. They're trying to do great work once they win it. And they're trying to keep performance. But managing that relationship and the natural tension that's there, there's folks that do it really well and achieve a lot of success. And there's folks that are a little apprehensive. And what are those pieces, those 2 or 3 little nuggets that make the real difference between a successful relationship, getting paid, performing on the project, and managing that general contractor's project manager and superintendent to be working for you instead of against you?
Well, first of all, the project manager for the GC or the owner, their main goal is how to achieve max flow on that project. How do you achieve max flow is by having all your contractors just constantly on the same page where everybody has their 15-minute huddles every single morning, and everybody understands where each and every single contractor is going to be and within that project space, right? So nobody is doing work twice, right? Nobody likes waste. And of course scheduling, right? So you don't want to start doing work ahead of a contractor where you never were able to communicate with them and understand that they needed to get into that area first before you. So one, the project manager needs to coordinate all that. As far as the subcontractor goes, you know, it's like being an employee and working for somebody. You should always try to stay one step ahead of your boss, right? And in this case, it's the project manager, right? They sign off on your weekly pay requisitions. So how do you stay one step ahead of them? And how do you engage in those conversations before you know exactly all the different steps that are involved? Let's say you're a plumber. You know all the different steps that are involved to get from point A to point B. The project manager knows when to get you in on the job, right? But they don't know all the steps like how you do. So why don't you stay 1 or 2 steps ahead of them and tell the project manager, hey, you know, it's Monday today. By Thursday, Friday, I'm going to be in that place. Is everything going to be clear for me? So to me, that's the perfect way to stay ahead, because you can't always assume that the project manager, because he's the top guy on the job, really understands your day-to-day operations. So that's really important to understand.
You know, I got advice when I was younger. I wanted to ask the question, how do I move up faster, right? How do I move up faster? And I was in corporate America, and they're like, you know what? The best advice I can give you is make your job's boss. Make your boss's job easy. Understand what they do, understand what keeps them up at night, understand where the pain points are, and solve those problems, even if they're not your job to do. And I took that to heart. I was like, well, I could do that. So I'd ask the questions, but how does that apply on a construction site, or does it apply?
I mean, it certainly applies, maybe not to that full caliber, but they you know, again, like what I was saying before is if your specialty is an electrician or a plumber, you can't assume that the GC really understands your full scope of work. You need to kind of educate them as well. And by doing that, they're going to be able to recognize that they need to get certain other scopes of work done before you get into a certain area. So, you know, it's the same thing, you know, instead of trying to be one step ahead of your boss, you know, you're trying to be one step ahead of your project manager. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. I'm going to shift gears on you for a second.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some stories of construction. So I'm sure on these projects, you've had subcontractors that you just worked with really well, and problems occurred. Sometimes they caused them. Sometimes it might have been a problem that just occurred that they had to deal with. And what I'd like to know is there 3 or 4 things that a commercial subcontractor can do right away when a problem occurs, whether caused by themselves or other, that will just separate them and accelerate them past any other by the way in which they handle that problem?
Well, first of all, acknowledge that you made a mistake, right? Understand that you made a mistake. I mean, listen, there's a lot of big egos, a lot of big personalities in this business, right? You know, everybody's trying to save face, but you need to acknowledge that you made a mistake. You need to bring that mistake to whose ever attention that needs to be brought, whether it's your own boss and within your own company, the project manager, and you need to make your corrections right away, because a lot of people, what they try to do also is they try to hide up their mistakes, and it bites them in the butt later on, right? And it also destroys their reputation as well, because that project manager is going to see that, and then he's going to go tell his executives, this guy's doing this, he's hiding up his work, he keeps messing up the job. Because everyone loves to finger point, right? And that's just the perfect opportunity to finger point. It really, truly is the perfect opportunity to finger point. So don't put yourself in a position where anybody can point their finger to you. So how do you do that? Is by communicating, right? Communication is the number one skill anybody in this business needs to have if you're going to be running crews and if you're going to be in a management position. So you need to communicate, and that is the number one way to save face and to have a reputation.
So do you have any stories of like on a job site, there was this problem, and this is how that particular contractor handled it. You could share.
Yeah, so one time we were one time we were demoing a bridge, and there was a conduit that was buried in one of the sidewalks, right? It was a fire alarm conduit, and it wasn't called out in the plans, and it wasn't marked out as well. And we hit the conduit, we knocked out, next thing you know, within 5-10 minutes, just probably 15-20 different fire trucks started flying right by us because we hit it, and then the code went off. The sirens went off, and again, my foreman called me up. He knew we made a mistake, and that's it. We didn't want a bad reputation with the owner and the fire department. We didn't want them to be breathing down our necks too. So again, this goes back to communication. We acknowledged that we made a mistake right away, and we saved face, and the fire department understood that we had a problem there. So right away they sent out their forces, and they respliced the wire, and then we moved it over because now we needed to maintain that while we demoed the bridge.
Yeah, without finger pointing. Oh, it wasn't on the plans. This wasn't on the site. It wasn't marked.
No, it's our responsibility. It's our job site. It's our contract. So we own it. Yeah, that's the bottom line. They can come back and they can say, well, you should have done test pits. You should have figured it out on your own. Again, it's not worth it because you don't want a bad relationship with the owner, and if you're a sub, you don't want a bad relationship with the project manager. So you got to really pick and choose your battles,
The other thing too, you listen to that story, Jerry, it's like when you own the problem, it diffuses the tension and puts the attention on, okay, how are we going to solve it? Instead of, why did you do it? Or finger point, oh, it wasn't my fault, it was their fault. That just it just creates more tension and never gets to the bottom. When you own it and just say, look, it was my fault, I own it. How do you want me to fix it? It calms everything down and allows like that sense of calm and a feeling, yeah, maybe you made a mistake, and maybe in this case you hit the conduit, but you know what, instead of your project manager getting to an even more heightened state and scream at it, when you can calm them down and the whole scenario so quickly by just saying, hey, look, I made a mistake, I own it, I want to fix it, how would you like me to fix it, let's talk about it. Boom, and just get on it, and then wait till the next day to go back and rehash what needs to, if anything at all, right?
I'm going to add one more thing to that is, instead of just going to the project manager or the owner and say, how do you want me to fix it? Present them one or two options of how you would like to fix it, right? So it's the same thing when I was, young and I was just starting out. Every time I had a problem on a job site, I never went to my super and said, hey, this is the problem, tell me how you want to fix it. I always went to them and said, this is the problem. We could either go this route or we can go that route. Are you okay with that? Go ahead, do it. And again, it goes back to reputation. It really helps you build your reputation because it shows that you're an experienced person, you're knowledgeable, and you know how to make decisions. Everybody wants to be surrounded with people who know how to make decisions, especially in this business, because there's thousands of decisions that need to be made every single day.
Every day. And then those decisions compound into the next one, to the next one.
Yeah, sure.
All right, switching to topic number 3 here. So on a job site at any given time, a construction subcontractor can start to run a little tight on cash. That tightness on cash can then create a cascade of events that might occur. It could mean delayed ordering of material. It could mean a crew that doesn't show up. Maybe only one crew shows up instead of 2 or 3. You're expecting more manpower and you're seeing less. As a project manager, for a general contractor, and you see stuff like that starting to occur, what's the initial first thought that a project manager has when they see something like that?
Again, every contract typically is a 30-day pay period, right? So, typically a GC is not going to pay their subs until the GC gets paid, right? So this also goes to the owner. Is the owner paying properly as well? I've worked with owners where every 30 days, like clockwork, they paid. And if they didn't pay every 30 days, they actually paid us interest. So, and then there's owners where they're 60, 90, sometimes I heard 120 days behind. And you're talking several $1 million per month worth of pay requisitions that you're not getting paid. And now your subs come knocking on your door and they start throwing their contract in your face as well. So it gets very sticky. But as a sub, if you're not getting paid and you know that the contractor is getting paid, at some point you got to bring it to the owner's attention as well. But then again, this goes to reputation, and it's not the route that you really want to go. So one, you need to invoice as a sub at a proper duration as well, right? So you can't be waiting. I've had many situations where I can count 10, 15 different emails where I was actually asking a sub to bill me. So it's not always the GC who's not paying the subs. The subs don't have a really good invoicing system as well. Actually, Scott, I just finished reading your book, and you were talking about this in your book. You got to be on top of your own invoicing.
Yeah.
So
you should always invoice, just no matter what, even if it's a small one.
You're right. It needs to become a system and a process and within your organization. I mean, if you want to grow as a company and you want to scale as a company, the way you invoice your accounting needs to be a process. It needs to be a systematical process every single month. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
So Jerry, though, if you're on that job site though, and you see them starting to pull a little labor back, but they have been invoicing you, they've been doing the right thing, billing, and the project is still paying, but yet they're just a little slow. Do you reach out to those subcontractors and say, hey, what's the problem? What's going on? Do you bring the heat on them? And I guess where I'm going with it is I'm trying to get a feel for, the subcontractor knows if they're tight, there's a reason. Maybe the GC doesn't realize it. But when is the right time for the subcontractor to come to the project manager and kind of wave their hand and be like, look, I need some financial help here. Like, yes, we're getting paid on time. It's been a little slow. We accelerated the schedule. We had this problem. I didn't budget it perfectly, but I need a little help to execute. I'm going to finish it. Like, when do they come? When is the right time to come to the project manager, and how should they come to handle like the problem that's happening internally? Again, it's not a problem on the project per se, but it's a problem internally that's going to create a problem on the project if we don't get it addressed.
So you're saying, can a sub go to a GC and ask them to front money for work that they haven't necessarily done before?
Or they say, look, here's my problem. My problem is I'm a little tight on cash. It's creating a problem for me to bring the right manpower onto this project until I get paid again. What solutions do I have? Like, when should they bring that scenario to the project manager? And if and when they do, and what you suggest, how should they approach it with you?
Scott, I'll be honest, I've never approached that. I've never encountered that situation. And I don't think a sub can really go to a GC and ask them for more money, right? Because even the GC's profit margins are so tight. So the way I would approach that is you need to as a sub, you need to reevaluate how you're attacking that specific project and how you can get more productions with either the same amount of manpower or less, or possibly rotate your upper management who may be your foreman on that project. Maybe they're underperforming. So you need to get more production so you could build more and catch up with your cash flow. But I don't think, I mean, I've never heard of a story where a sub was able to go to a GC and ask for more money because they possibly had a bust in the estimate of some sort, right? I mean, maybe on a smaller contract, but if you're on $100 million project and your electrician is got a $10 million contract, I mean, if you made a bust, you need to own that, especially when you're dealing with public work. There are no inclusions and exclusions in public work. You own that contract. So
what if it comes down to something like, sometimes it could be like, and again, maybe this is smaller projects, certainly not 100 million, but it could be 10, 20, $30 million projects, and they're private. And let's say you're just having a hard time with your supplier releasing material because you don't have the best terms with them, and you need to get more material on the site. It's not a labor issue, it's more a material issue. Have you had subs come to you in those instances, and whether you were talking about joint checking material or the GC purchases the material and then creates a change order? Is there any scenario like that you've encountered or would suggest encounter?
Well, maybe if the GC's got a better relationship with a certain supplier, maybe what they can do is they can get a credit for that material, and then they can purchase that material on their own.
Yeah.
So, that's a possibility. I've done that once before where, there was a sole supplier for a certain amount of material, and the specific sub just wasn't able to buy that material, and they needed to wait because they needed to go through their whole credit history, and it was going to take way too long. I knew it was going to slow down the project, so they gave us the credit for that, and then we just bought the material for them.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's go to the
So
change.
that's one route.
Yeah, that was one of the examples I was thinking, because it could be material, sometimes it's labor, sometimes it's overall. And I didn't necessarily mean they underbid it. It's just it might be perfectly bid. It's just the cash flow isn't working as fast. So I think you addressed that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a change order though. How should a construction subcontractor, commercial, on a commercial project, address a change order with their project manager, either at the point of being asked to do it? Maybe the project manager knows it's a change order, so that's very specific. But what if the commercial subcontractor feels like they're being asked to do something that, in their opinion, is outside their scope of work? How should that conversation be had with the project manager? So that, again, with the intent that they can get it approved and get it paid.
So for one, communicate, right? One, verbally, and then I would also put that in an email format as well, so you have it in writing, right? So I wouldn't just go ahead and just start doing work without you communicating and finding out how you're going to get paid. Know your facts, know your scope, right? Nowhere in the plans and nowhere in the specs it says that that's not part of your scope of work, right? Change orders, you need to do every single day. You need to come up with a time and material sheet, and you need to get that signed off every single day. You can't wait a week. You can't wait 2 weeks, because you know what's going to happen is you're going to have 2 weeks worth of change order, 2 weeks of time and material sheets, and then you're going to go to the project manager who needs to sign off on it, and then from there it's his word against your, or it's his or her word against yours. So every single day. So one, you need to communicate it, and you can't just jump in and start doing work that you know you're not going to get paid for, and that's not part of your scope. So you need to communicate that. And for me personally, I wouldn't start doing the work unless they agree to pay for it. But you got to have your facts in order as well, right? So you really need to understand your plans and your specs as well. And you need to communicate that with your foreman as well, because sometimes you're not always on the job site. So the last thing you want to do is disappear and go to another job site and come back and find that your foreman is doing work that he or she shouldn't be doing. So again, I think the number one thing is that when they agree to pay, you got to come up with a time and material sheet, and you got to have them sign off on that every single day.
I like that, because even 1 day more, 2 days more, a lot of stuff happens, man. People forget, you can't remember. The whole project could change in a day too. It's depending on where you're at in the project, something gets, done. So I think you're right. Having that instruction guide there to sign off daily, it just builds, again, that repetition of, yep, it's working on this change order. It's almost done. I have this many hours in, versus hitting somebody with 40, 50, 60 hours of time when maybe you should have done it at 6 hours at a clip. Would have been a lot better, more successful.
There's also things on these change order sheets that originate and start from a different project, right? So if you encounter a change order and it requires material or a piece of equipment from a different project, well, now that other project is also suffering now because they need to give up that piece of equipment, or you need to go send a truck to go pick it up, whatever it may be. So there's also costs that are off-site that need to be brought to the project manager's attention. And it's much easier to bring that to their attention on a daily basis rather than waiting a week or two. So, yeah. And I often hear how a lot of contractors don't make money on change orders, and I just don't understand that. There's so much that happens to get a certain activity done. If the person who's putting together the change order really understands what's involved, they should have all of that on their change order sheets. Whatever whatever change order sheet is required for that specific owner or that specific general contractor.
Yeah. So Jerry, tell me how Pro-Accel, your business, can help solve some of these problems. So because these are issues, I ask these questions to you very specifically. These are the things we hear about all the time in our world. We see them on projects. We see people dealing with them. We work so closely with our clients specifically in the cash flows. not only before the job, but also during and as bills are paid, as money comes in. So I ask these very specifically because I know in my heart, I see it exactly what problems are being incurred and how they're trying to go about solving them. So my question to you is, how could you help them either proactively or during in your business? If someone has these issues and they want to get on top of it, how can you help them?
Sure. So, first we start off with an ops assessment, right? It takes a couple of weeks, couple of phone calls. We get in front of the right people. We figure out what your goals are and what your pain points are. And then we come up with a roadmap to how to fix these problems, but not only fix these problems on that specific job. How do we fix these problems permanently, right? What's wrong with the system? What's wrong with the process? Why are these fires repeatedly starting? And then from there, we work with a specific contractor, whether it's a team, a group, or whether it's just the owner themselves, and we develop a plan to eliminate these fires, right? So, because a lot of owners, they feel that they can't get out of their business. I was talking to one owner a couple of weeks ago. He says, Jerry, every single time I take a vacation, I know I'm losing money on my project sites. Well, why is that? It's just because their teams just don't fully understand what they need to be getting done every single day. It's not that hard of a solution. Problem is that a lot of these executives and these owners are so busy every single day dealing with the day-to-day operations, right? And that's where someone like me comes in, where while they're taking care of their day-to-day operations, a person like me will help them develop plans where they can start stepping more further away from those day-to-day operations, and their people have a more streamlined process to get every single job done correctly and to provide repeatable project success.
Yeah, it's interesting because, as folks start to struggle with those items, it's hard to look in the mirror or look back in your business and see where the problem is. You go about pointing fingers, but as an owner, you really should just own the problem as your own and then figure out what the solution is. And it oftentimes doesn't mean fire somebody or hire someone new. It might just mean you need training, which again is on you as the owner. And so I think trying to find some professional services like yourself who can help you organize your team so they're working efficiently, so they're highly productive, so they're leading by example on whatever you set up and set out to do on any given project, day in, day out, and keeping you safe so that you can actually go on vacation and not lose money. To me, I think that's where the savings is right there. If you can take a vacation and still make the same money, you pretty much pay for the services that you're buying, right? To learn, right? It's part of learning.
Absolutely. I mean, when you're doing the same thing over and over every single day, you get caught up and you don't really realize where your bottlenecks are and where your waste is. When you get that outside perspective, who's working with all these different contractors and what's seeing what's working and what's not working, who works for all these different size companies and has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, the great ways of doing things and the not so good ways of doing it, seeing large successes and large losses. Having that outside perspective can really help you catch these bottlenecks and this waste and this wasted overhead. I mean, we're in an era now where there's all this money coming into infrastructure, which hasn't really hit just yet. But how do you diversify your portfolio? How do you take the team that you have and really maximize the team you have, so you're not just constantly calling up recruiters and hiring more people as well? So.
That's cool. Well, Jerry, I appreciate your time today. I'm so glad you got a chance to get on our show and talk about your services, talk about your experience, talk about the problems, getting paid, how to get paid, how to work closely with your project manager. I just really appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to add? What's the best takeaway that you hope people walk away with? If there's just one thing they heard on this show today, what you would want them to walk away with knowing or remembering?
So most of what we talked about is about communication, right? So everybody's got goals. And if you don't have total buy-in to your goal, if everyone that's involved to get to your goal doesn't understand that they have a benefit to get to that goal, it's just going to be an impossible mission. It's just like a project site, right? The goal is to get that job done on time, on schedule, and everybody needs to make money.
Yep.
So that's the goal. Everybody needs to have buy-in to that goal, and they need to understand why they need to get certain aspects of that project done at the certain time that you guys agree to.
I love it. Jerry, it's been awesome having you on the show. You're gonna have to come back again next time, and we'll talk about some new topics. Maybe you can share some even more successes from your business, some money you've been saving. I know you've saved a lot of people some significant dollars, and I've heard about it. So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to bring you on the show, share not only your experience, but your services and what you can offer. And I know there's some folks out there that not only got help from what you said today, but could certainly get more further help from you. So how should people find you? Where's the best place to find you if they want to see what you're talking about, hear what you have to say, and then of course even talk to you about your service?
Sure, no problem. So you can go on my LinkedIn account, send me a DM over there. I hang out there and I post frequently over there. You can send me an email at Jerry with a J, Jerry at Pro-Accel, ACCEL.com. And I'm in the process of building a website. So that should be up and running in the next couple of weeks, probably 2 weeks or so. Yep.
That's awesome. Well, everyone,
thanks for having me on, man.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said, thanks for having me on. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. That's my pleasure. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the episode we had today. If you have, please share with some friends. Click on the subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're on our podcast, any different your favorite podcast stream, please subscribe to our channel and share the episode. That's how we can grow. Other than that, have a great day. I wish you all the best luck, and we'll see you around soon.
Thank you.